Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben, episode number 7. I can't believe it now, a full week of daily episodes. They're going so well, I'm going to continue them daily, fingers crossed, as long as I can find enough content for you all to post them out daily. So I hope you're enjoying them, and remember to click that subscribe button. And thanks if you've tuned back into the latest episode, or if you're new, feel free to check out all the other episodes what are on. And one of them explains how I got into gardening and who is gardening with Ben. So today's episode is going to be continuing from yesterday's episode. Yesterday's episode was all about what jobs to do in the vegetable garden, fruit garden, and in the flower beds. So today's episode is going to be talking about what we can plant this month, as there's still stuff you can be planting in November. You wouldn't think it with how cold it is and the horrible wet weather and the windy weather, but yet there's still plenty of stuff that we can still plant out in the gardens and in the allotments. So we're going to be explaining what's best to be planted now in November. So get your cup of coffee, cup of tea, sit back, relax, or if you're listening on the allotment or garden, I hope you all enjoy it. So for these episodes, we're going to split it up into 3 sections. We're going to tell you what to plant in the fruit garden, what to plant in the vegetable garden, and what to plant in your flower beds. So the first section that we will look at is what vegetables to sow this month in the allotment. So yesterday I talked about preparing the ground to plant asparagus. Now you can plant your asparagus crowns. You can get these from many garden centres or online. And you've got to remember that where you plant your asparagus, it's going to be growing there for some years. So make sure you pick a spot that's decent. If you're just starting out on an allotment, make sure you plant it in the right place, and it will grow there for years to come, every year, and come back healthy. So also you can be planting garlic this month. You can either plant the normal garlic, but remember you've got to plant them in the separate cloves, not as a whole bulb. And you can also plant elephant garlic, which is a lot bigger than normal garlic. It's not something you often see, but you can plant elephant garlic this month as well. If you're growing autumn onions, you can plant them sets out now. They usually come as small little onion bulbs, and you just plant them in the soil, spaced out in between, with enough space in between so that you can weed in between the plots, in between the onions. And those can be sown outside now. If you're planting garlic and onions outside, make sure you cover them with netting, as the birds do like to pull them up out of the ground, and they'll also eat the tops off the onions once the shoots start popping through, so you don't want to lose them. So make sure you cover them with some bird-proof netting, just to protect them a bit better. You can sow spring onion this month as well, but the way that you need to do that is either indoors in a polytunnel or under clochers, as obviously the cold weather won't help it, but if you plant them in them, you should be able to pick some spring onions in spring, hence the reason spring onions. So yeah, that's another thing you can plant this month. And also, if you're wanting to grow some stuff in your house, you can start some herbs off on your kitchen shelf. You can start some basil off, dill, chives and parsley. So you can always start them off indoors in the house, and then when it gets nice next year, you can always plant them outside in the ground. But you might be best off planting them in plant pots, because herbs do like to spread and take over the ground. So if you plant them in plant pots, it keeps them contained and stops them from spreading. You can also sow broad beans now. If you're sowing broad beans in the autumn time, winter time, it means that there won't be as many bugs around for them to get into the broad beans and attack them. So, and also with them growing through winter, they'll grow stronger plants because they need the strength to keep themselves going through the winter. But you do need to check out for winter varieties so that they can stay alive through the winter time, as some aren't as strong enough to cope through the winter periods. So that is all the vegetables that you can plant this month. If you haven't heard already, the place where I'm recording these podcasts is an app called Anchor, and it's totally free. They also put your podcasts on multiple platforms like Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. Straight away, you can also schedule the time that you want it to go on, which is fantastic. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer, so you can record your podcast literally anywhere you want. You can also make money from your podcasts as well, with no minimum listenership whatsoever. So the more times it gets played, the more times you can earn money from it. And there's everything you need to make your podcast all in one place. So if you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm, you can get started with your free podcasts. Next up, we're going to look at what can be planted in the fruit garden. The autumn and the winter months are the ideal times to be planting the fruit, as the plants are pretty much dormant and the wet weather helps them take root in the ground and is an ideal time to be planting your fruit, should I say. So one of the fruits that you can plant this month are rhubarb crowns, as again, rhubarb is not growing at this time of year, so you can plant your crowns into the ground, and obviously the wet weather will help them take root and get going. But the one thing that you need to remember when growing rhubarb crowns is that you can't pick the rhubarb in the first year. You need it to take root and get strong and grow in the first year, and then you will be picking it in the second year. Don't be tempted to pick it from the first year. Just leave it to grow and then pick it in the second year, and you will get better rhubarb crowns. One plant you can plant this month is blueberry plants. Now, blueberry plants, you have to plant them in herbaceous soil. So because you've got to plant them in that special soil, the best thing I've done is I've planted them in pots, and I've sunk the pots into the ground so that they're in that herbaceous soil and they're into the ground. So it just looks as if they're actually growing from the ground, but they're not. They're growing in pots. And I had a fantastic crop. It was the first year that I grew some, and I got quite a few handfuls off each plant, and I was happy with the outcome of them. So fingers crossed next year I will get an even better crop. Continuing with the bushes, you can plant your gooseberries and your currants now. So that's your black currants, white currants, red currants, all your currants. There's all different colours, but they can just be planted in the normal ground, but make sure that they've got enough space in between the bushes, as they don't like to compete against the other plants. You need to leave enough space so that they can grow and bush out and grow nice and big and healthy. Some people often plant them through black membrane so that the membrane keeps the soil moist, and also it prevents the weeds from growing. So you can just put a slit in it and plant them through there, and then it's ideal. Next up are your strawberries. Now, if you've been growing strawberries or have sent some runners out, them runners can now be put into the ground and placed in the right place for them to be starting to grow. If you're deciding to grow them in pots, they should be okay through the winter time, but in the summer they will need and require a lot of water, as they'll soon dry out in the pots. So ideally you should be growing the strawberries in the ground rather than in pots, but if you've got the time to keep them watered, you can grow them in pots, and they can trail over the edge of the pots if they're hung up. Last but not least, but raspberry canes and blackberries. Now again, these can be planted this month. My raspberries, the thing is about growing raspberries is that they can be worse than weeds. They send out roots and the shoots pop up all over the place. But in the winter time, I usually dig up the ones that I've grown in the wrong places and plant them back to where they need to be in line with the others. And also, ideally, you need some wire fencing or something to hold them up, as they will like to flop over when they get heavy. So you need to put them against something that they can grow against and you can fasten them to. And obviously blackberries as well, they can trail against fruit wires as well. So ideally you need to plant them somewhere that you can fasten them up so that they're not growing along the ground. So that is all the tips on what to plant in the fruit garden. Last but not least is what to plant in the flower garden in November. As one of my other episodes, I was talking about spring bulbs. You can still be planting your spring bulbs this month, ready for them to come up in the springtime. So that's your hyacinths, your daffodils, your tulips, your alliums, your snowdrops, your crocuses. All them can still be planted now, and please do pop some in if you've got an allotment, as it will help the bees in the springtime, which I do explain in my other episode. So make sure you check out that episode if you've not checked it out. Also, you can start to plant your bare-rooted roses, or as I've just purchased, which I went into B&Q today to get some screws for my new fence which I've been building, and I ended up going in the reduced section and I saw 2 rose plants just sat there on their own at £2 each, reduced from £8, and I just had to buy them. I had no choice. I'm sure if you've also got an allotment or garden and you see something good in the reduced style, you always end up buying it. So I've got 2 rose plants for my allotment. I've never grown roses on my plot, so they're new. So I'm looking forward to planting them this weekend and hopefully show you all the blooms on my Instagram and Facebook. So what else can we plant this month? We can plant out all your pansies, violas, your primulas, all those that add a bit more colour to the garden in the winter time, as they're only the plants which are flowering at this time of year. And if you're wanting some extra colour in your garden, they are ideal plants to plant this month. So that has been your tips for what to plant in the garden for November. I hope you found them useful. I certainly do when I'm researching and when I'm finding out what needs to be done each month. It's always good for me to know as well, as I always still class myself as an amateur gardener. Even though I've been doing my allotment for 16 years, I'm still learning every single day. So I hope you found that useful. Remember to click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all my new podcasts which are getting recorded, and I hope you do enjoy them. If you're listening on iTunes, remember to give it a rating. And yeah, I hope you come back for tomorrow's episode. And in the meantime, remember, keep gardening.